Hello everyone, and welcome to my Bold and Beautiful Gossips 24 channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Brooke Logan had never felt more alone in her life. Yet paradoxically, she had never felt more surrounded by chaos. The hospital room was silent, save for the occasional beep of machines monitoring vital signs, but the tension in the air was suffocating, thick enough to choke anyone who dared breathe too loudly. She lay there, pale and trembling beneath the hospital blanket, her mind racing faster than any heartbeat her body could produce. It wasn't just the illness, they still didn't know exactly what was wrong, but the fear of the unknown, the dread of what might come next, gnawed at her relentlessly. Doctors had run every test they could think of, yet Brooke's symptoms were enigmatic, a puzzle that refused to be solved, and each passing hour made the worry in Hope's eyes burn brighter and heavier. Hope had been by her side since the moment Brooke collapsed at Forrester Creations earlier that week, a loyal daughter who oscillated between fierce protectiveness and the helpless despair of someone watching a loved one slowly slip away without any warning. It wasn't just a routine medical crisis. This was turning deadly, a confrontation with mortality that Brooke, for all her strength, had never anticipated. And it seemed the entire world had decided to watch it unfold like a storm circling overhead, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. From the moment Brooke had first complained of the symptoms, a subtle fatigue she brushed off as overwork, a strange dizziness that she convinced herself was dehydration, the occasional stabbing pain she attributed to stress, the tension had escalated. At first, Hope had been the one dismissing her mother's worries, too wrapped up in the endless cycles of work and family drama, too accustomed to the idea that Brooke was indestructible to really panic. But then the collapse had happened, and in that instant reality crashed in. Brooke was no longer just a vibrant, unstoppable presence at the center of the Forrester universe. She was vulnerable, terrifyingly vulnerable, and Hope, who had always seen herself as the protector, the anchor, suddenly realized just how fragile life could be when confronted with the merciless certainty of illness that refused to announce itself clearly. The doctors, as usual, maintained a professional calm that belied the tension under the surface. They moved around Brooke's hospital room with clinical precision, their eyes scanning charts and screens, their voices low and measured, yet every word they spoke carried the weight of uncertainty. Dr. Buckingham, typically composed, had been unusually tense, frowning at test results, muttering under his breath, trying to reconcile the numbers with Brooke's stubbornly deteriorating condition. The tests didn't match up, the symptoms didn't fit neatly into any known pattern, and the lack of clarity only added fuel to the already raging fire of worry in Hope's heart. The young woman clutched Brooke's hand as though sheer physical contact could somehow anchor her mother to safety, even as the storm of medical jargon and growing concern threatened to overwhelm them both. It was in that moment of heightened fear, when every second felt like an hour, that chaos truly erupted. Across the room, the door burst open before anyone could anticipate it, and the air shifted with the arrival of Liam, Hope's husband, who had been pacing the hallway in agony. His face was etched with worry, his hands trembling slightly, his usual calm and measured demeanor replaced by raw, unfiltered panic. "What's happening? What did they find?" he demanded, stepping forward as if sheer force of will could compel the doctors to deliver answers. Hope's grip on Brooke's hand tightened as if bracing for impact, while Brooke herself, weak but ever resilient, tried to muster a smile. Her lips quivered, a faint attempt at reassurance, though the fear in her eyes betrayed the truth. She was scared. Liam, usually so steady and reliable, was visibly shaken, and the tension in the room rose as though the walls themselves were absorbing and amplifying the emotional electricity that had suddenly filled the air. Before anyone could respond, another figure appeared. A man who had been lingering in the shadows of the family's drama for far too long. Thomas Forrester, ever the opportunist, had arrived under the guise of concern, yet his eyes betrayed a mixture of curiosity and calculation. He lingered near the doorway, observing the chaos with the intensity of a predator studying prey. His sudden appearance added another layer of tension, and Hope instinctively moved closer to her mother, protective instincts kicking in. Brooke, ever perceptive, sensed the shift in the atmosphere and gave a weak, almost imperceptible shake of her head. She didn't need to speak to convey her message. Focus on her, not the schemer lurking in the background. But in the chaos of the hospital room, With doctors scrambling to explain and Liam seeking answers, Thomas's presence only heightened the sense of danger and unpredictability. As the minutes stretched into what felt like eternity, Brooke's condition worsened. Her breathing became shallow, her skin cold to the touch, and her pulse began to fluctuate dangerously. The monitors beeped a warning, the sound slicing through the tension like a knife. Dr. Buckingham barked orders to the nurses, his voice sharp and commanding, yet there was a tightness in his jaw, a flicker of fear that Hope couldn't ignore. She pressed herself against Brooke's side, whispering words of encouragement, trying to inject some semblance of calm into the room, even as her own heart raced. Liam hovered over them, torn between holding Hope, comforting Brooke, and confronting the doctors, a human tornado of panic and love and helplessness. The entire scene had devolved into a maelstrom of emotions, a high-stakes clash where time was both enemy and accomplice, where every second could tilt the scales between life and death. The doctors decided immediate intervention was necessary, though the exact procedure remained uncertain. They wheeled Brooke into surgery, moving quickly yet carefully, the hallway outside the room echoing with the hurried footsteps of medical staff. Hope and Liam were left behind, the doors closing behind Brooke like a barrier between them and certainty. In that split second the world seemed to stop. Hope's tears streamed freely, her fingers entwined with Liam's as they shared a silent, desperate prayer for Brooke's safety. There was no room for distractions, no time for small talk or polite reassurances. This was raw, unfiltered fear, a confrontation with mortality that neither Hope nor Liam had been prepared for, and the weight of it pressed down like a physical force. Meanwhile, in the waiting room, chaos of a different kind began to unfold. Thomas, unwilling to leave, hovered near the corridor, his expression unreadable, a storm of curiosity and scheming brewing behind his eyes. He whispered to Ridge, who had arrived moments earlier, his concern genuine but clouded by anger at Thomas's intrusion. Ridge's voice was low, steady, yet there was an undercurrent of fury, a protective instinct for Brooke and a simmering rage toward his son's opportunistic tendencies. "She needs peace," Ridge said, his tone both warning and plea, but Thomas, ever defiant, continued to linger, insisting he had a right to be there, that as part of the family, he should witness and perhaps influence the outcome. Ridge's glare could have frozen fire, and for a moment Thomas hesitated, caught between his desire for control and the palpable authority of his father. Inside the operating room the stakes could not have been higher. Brooke's body, frail yet stubbornly resilient, lay beneath the bright, unforgiving lights, her every breath a delicate balance between hope and despair. The surgeons moved with precision, each incision, each maneuver a calculated effort to stabilize her condition. Dr. Buckingham's face was set in a mask of concentration, yet his eyes betrayed the immense pressure he felt. Brooke's illness was unpredictable, a medical mystery that had turned deadly, and each passing moment was a reminder that certainty was a luxury they could not afford. The team worked tirelessly, hands moving in synchronized choreography, yet the tension was palpable, radiating outward into the waiting room, infecting every soul with the weight of the unknown. Hope and Liam paced the hall, their hands intertwined, their faces masks of anxiety and determination. Each passing minute felt like a lifetime. They whispered reassurances to each other, promises of survival and strength, yet beneath those words lay the raw, unfiltered fear that Brooke might not make it through. The hospital, normally a place of healing and hope, had transformed into a crucible of emotions, a battlefield where love, fear, and desperation collided with the unforgiving reality of life and death. Suddenly, a nurse emerged from the operating room, her expression grim, and Hope's heart stopped. Liam instinctively reached for her, clutching her hand with a strength born of panic. The nurse's words were careful, deliberate, each syllable a measured attempt to soften the blow of uncertainty, yet the weight of them was undeniable. Brooke's condition was critical, the situation more precarious than anyone had anticipated, and the path forward was uncertain. Hope's knees nearly buckled, but Liam's steady presence anchored her, even as the tears fell freely down her cheeks. The fear of loss, of the unthinkable, threatened to overwhelm every rational thought, yet together they clung to each other, a single unit of love and hope in the eye of a merciless storm. As the hours dragged on, subtle signs of improvement began to appear. Brooke's vitals stabilized just enough to offer a glimmer of hope, though the danger was far from over. Dr. Buckingham emerged from the operating room, exhaustion evident in every line of his face, yet there was a faint smile, a whisper of optimism in the storm. "She's strong," he said simply, the words carrying more weight than any detailed explanation could. Hope and Liam clung to that single phrase, repeating it to each other like a mantra, a lifeline in a sea of fear. Ridge arrived shortly after, his expression a mixture of relief and residual fury at the chaos surrounding his family, but even he allowed himself a moment of hope. Brooke, despite everything, had not yet surrendered to the darkness, and that small victory felt monumental. Even as the immediate danger began to recede, the ripple effects of the crisis were felt throughout the Forrester family. Alliances were tested, secrets threatened to surface, and the emotional toll of witnessing a loved one on the edge of death left scars that would not heal overnight. Hope's protective instincts were heightened, Liam's determination intensified, and even Thomas, despite his typical self-interest, felt the weight of family bonds in a way that few crises could evoke. Brooke, once stable in her hospital bed, still needed time to recover, yet the experience had transformed everyone in its wake. The medical mystery that had turned deadly was a stark reminder of the fragility of life, the unpredictability of illness, and the unyielding strength of love and family in the face of chaos. By the time Brooke finally opened her eyes, the room filled with sighs of relief, the emotional tension gave way to tears, hugs, and whispered reassurances. The battle had not yet ended, recovery would take time, and the mystery of her illness was far from fully resolved. But in that moment, the Forrester family felt the power of resilience, the unbreakable bonds that could withstand even the most harrowing of storms. Hope, holding her mother's hand, whispered words of love and promise, while Liam, ever steadfast, vowed silently to protect and support both of them no matter the cost. And in that chaotic clash of fear, desperation, and hope, one undeniable truth emerged. The Forrester family, though battered and tested, would endure, and Brooke Logan, the heart of it all, would continue to fight, a beacon of strength, courage, and unwavering love. Even after Brooke stabilized, the tension in the hospital did not dissipate. In fact, it seemed to intensify as the implications of her medical crisis rippled through the Forrester family. Hope refused to leave her mother's side, her presence a constant reassurance, though her mind never stopped racing. Every small movement of Brooke's hand, every shallow breath, every flicker of her eyelids was a source of both hope and anxiety. The young woman had been forced to confront a terrifying truth. Life was fragile, and those we loved most were never truly safe. Liam stayed close, his normally steady demeanor tested to its limits, and even Ridge, who had spent the better part of his life as a pillar of strength, found himself shaken. Watching Brooke, his lifelong confidant, friend, and sometimes adversary, vulnerable and in danger, was a confrontation with mortality that left a lingering ache in his chest. The hospital room, though quiet in comparison to the chaos of the previous hours, was saturated with tension, each family member wrestling privately with their own emotions. Liam sat near Hope, holding her hand and occasionally brushing a stray lock of hair from her face, a tender gesture that was both grounding and heartbreaking. They had both experienced loss before, but the raw intensity of watching someone as formidable as Brooke teeter on the edge of life and death brought a unique, almost unbearable weight. Every whispered reassurance, every promise of recovery, felt simultaneously comforting and fragile, like a paper bridge stretched over a chasm. The constant beeping of the monitors and the sterile smell of antiseptic were reminders that this was a battle against an invisible enemy, one that did not discriminate and would not relent without consequence. Brooke's awakening was gradual, almost imperceptible at first. Her eyelids fluttered, her fingers twitched, and a faint raspy sigh escaped her lips. Hope leaned closer, whispering her mother's name in a voice trembling with relief and fear. "Mom, it's me, you're okay." Brooke's eyes opened slowly, confusion and recognition mingling in a fragile dance. She tried to speak, but her voice came out hoarse, barely more than a whisper. Liam immediately offered water, helping her sip carefully, each motion precise, as if even the gentlest action could set off a chain reaction of medical setbacks. Hope watched anxiously, noting every subtle change, every indication that Brooke's body was fighting to regain strength. The relief was palpable, but it was tempered by the knowledge that this was only the beginning of a long and uncertain road to recovery. As Brooke regained consciousness, the emotional toll of the experience began to surface in unexpected ways. Memories of past family conflicts, long-standing rivalries, and unspoken tensions rose to the forefront, threatening to complicate the fragile equilibrium that had been achieved in her recovery. Thomas, ever the manipulator, remained nearby, offering a smile that was polite but calculated, his eyes observing the room with a mixture of curiosity and strategy. Ridge noticed immediately, his protective instincts flaring. "She doesn't need scheming right now," he muttered under his breath, a warning that carried the weight of years of experience with Thomas's unpredictable behavior. Even Hope and Liam, caught up in their relief, could sense the subtle tension, a reminder that the drama surrounding the Forrester family never truly ceased, even in the face of life-and-death emergencies. Brooke's recovery, though steady, was far from simple. The doctors recommended a period of intensive monitoring, with strict limitations on physical activity, and a regimen of treatments designed to stabilize her condition. Each procedure, each dose of medication was meticulously calculated. Yet Brooke's body often rebelled against even the smallest interventions. There were moments when her pulse would spike, when nausea or dizziness would return without warning, and each episode sent waves of fear through her family. Hope, torn between hope and fear, found herself oscillating between panic and determination, willing Brooke to push through every challenge, yet terrified of the consequences if her mother's body could not keep pace. Liam, though outwardly calm, carried a quiet tension that spoke of sleepless nights and relentless worry, a silent burden that he shared with Hope in their private moments of vulnerability. While Brooke's medical crisis dominated attention, the undercurrents of family drama continued to swirl. Ridge, frustrated by the constant tension, sought to assert control, but even his authority was challenged. Thomas, subtle but persistent, tried to insert himself into conversations, offering opinions on treatment plans, family dynamics, and even the broader implications of Brooke's condition for Forrester Creations. Ridge's patience, already worn thin by fear and exhaustion, frayed visibly. "Enough, Thomas," he snapped, the low growl in his voice unmistakable. "Right now, your opinion is irrelevant. Brooke's health comes first." The room fell silent, the weight of Ridge's authority settling over everyone. Yet even as Thomas retreated, the tension remained, a reminder that the family's complex web of alliances and rivalries never truly allowed for peace, even in moments of crisis. Amid the tension, moments of vulnerability and connection emerged. Brooke, still fragile but gradually regaining strength, found comfort in the presence of her children and family. Hope, sitting close to her mother, shared quiet conversations about memories, dreams, and fears. Liam offered gentle encouragement, a reassuring hand on Brooke's arm, a soft voice reminding her that she was not alone. Ridge, usually reserved with emotions, allowed himself glimpses of tenderness, a hand resting lightly on Brooke's shoulder, a nod of reassurance, a reminder that family strength could manifest in subtle, understated ways. Even Thomas, despite his usual self-interest, found himself affected by the vulnerability in the room, a subtle shift in his demeanor hinting at the deep, often conflicting bonds that tied the family together. Yet the shadow of danger remained ever present. Brooke's medical mystery had not been fully resolved, and every new symptom, every unexpected fluctuation in her condition, served as a reminder of the uncertainty that loomed over them. The doctors were cautious, careful not to overpromise, and their vigilance reflected the seriousness of the situation. Hope, determined to advocate for her mother, asked detailed questions, monitored treatments, and challenged the medical team when necessary, embodying the fierce protective instinct that had defined her from the start. Liam, equally committed, coordinated with Hope, ensuring that every aspect of Brooke's care was meticulously managed. Together they formed a united front, a barrier against the uncertainty and fear that sought to infiltrate every corner of the hospital room. The ripple effects of Brooke's crisis extended beyond the hospital walls. At Forrester Creations, the absence of their central figure caused a surge of anxiety and confusion among the staff. Decisions that had once been routine became fraught with tension, deadlines loomed ominously, and the pressure of keeping the fashion house running while family members faced life-threatening uncertainty created an almost unbearable strain. Employees whispered in hallways, speculated about the cause of Brooke's sudden collapse, and speculated on what the future might hold for the company in her absence. Ridge, burdened with both personal and professional responsibilities, worked tirelessly to maintain order, But even his formidable presence could not fully mitigate the anxiety that permeated the office. As the days passed, Brooke's condition gradually stabilized, though she remained under constant supervision. The medical team continued to investigate the underlying cause of her illness, running tests, consulting specialists, and monitoring her progress. Each small victory, a stable blood pressure reading, a return of appetite, a successful treatment session, was celebrated quietly, yet the overarching uncertainty remained. Hope and Liam remained vigilant, their attention divided between monitoring her condition, managing their own emotional responses, and navigating the complex interpersonal dynamics of the Forrester family. Thomas, still present but restrained, continued to observe, his intentions opaque, adding an element of unpredictability to the already volatile situation. The crisis also forced reflection and reconnection within the family. Conversations that had long been avoided, tensions that had simmered beneath the surface for years, and unresolved conflicts came to the forefront in the wake of Brooke's illness. Ridge and Brooke shared moments of honesty and vulnerability, acknowledging their mutual reliance and the unspoken bond that had sustained them through decades of turmoil. Hope and Liam deepened their partnership, recognizing the strength they derived from each other in moments of extreme stress. Even Thomas, whose actions often sowed discord, experienced a shift, if only subtle, as he confronted the reality of Brooke's fragility and the profound impact of family unity in times of crisis. Despite the intense emotional and physical challenges, Brooke's resilience began to shine through. She engaged with her treatment, participated in physical therapy, and began to regain her characteristic wit and humor, albeit cautiously. Her interactions with family members were tinged with warmth, gratitude, and moments of levity, reminding everyone present that the essence of Brooke Logan, her strength, her compassion, her indomitable spirit, remained intact. Hope and Liam, witnessing her gradual recovery, found renewed purpose and determination, their love for Brooke deepening in ways that only life-threatening experiences can catalyze. Ridge, observing the small victories, allowed himself moments of optimism, a recognition that even amid chaos, hope could flourish. The shadow of uncertainty remained, however, a persistent reminder that life was unpredictable, and that Brooke's medical mystery, while partially addressed, was not fully resolved. Yet within this uncertainty lay the undeniable truth of family resilience, the unbreakable bonds forged through decades of shared experiences, triumphs, and challenges. The Forrester family, battered but unbowed, faced the future with renewed determination, a recognition that together, they could weather even the most harrowing storms. Brooke's survival, fragile yet undeniable, became a testament to the strength of love, the power of perseverance, and the enduring force of hope in the face of chaos.